Welcome to the Timescales Interviews. I'm Grego, your host. Today we have a very special guest, the nerdy, nostalgic, vintage geek, artist, collector, and Rondo Award Winning author, the extraordinary Marshall Julius. Hi, Mr. Julius.
Hello, please call me Marshall. Extraordinary
Okay.
is fine.
Okay.
And this is the first podcast I've done since winning the Rondo, and I really like Rondo Award Winning. That is chef's kiss introduction. Very good. I like that. Thank you very
Yes,
much.
sir.
Very happy to be here.
Okay, yeah, and congratulations on the Rondo. We are
Thank
going to
you.
touch on that here in a moment. That is awesome. I'm happy for you. And the this interview is being conducted in California and the United Kingdom. Are you in London?
Just outside London, in Kent. It's on the other side of the river. So my family in North London think that it's like crossing through the gates of Mordor, but actually it's pretty close to London. You know,
Okay.
when you buy the house, you say, look, it's Kent. It makes it a little bit cheaper. When you sell the house, you say it's London, so that you can try and sell it for a little bit more. That's the rule. But basically, it's basically London.
Okay. So what's it like there? I guess it's a little after 9 o'clock, your evening.
Yeah, it's just getting dark, and it's very suburban and quiet. But I have a train station nearby, and I can get into the middle of town in about 40 minutes. So for previews and interviews and comic shops and pubs, and they're quite separate lives, because honestly, most of my time is spent at home, here at my desk with my face in the computer, writing. So.
I cannot wait to talk to you about that collection that is behind you. That looks
Yeah,
very
it does. It goes all
interesting.
around. It goes even up onto the ceiling.
Oh,
I make the most of my space. I have to maximize it. My wife said when we moved into the house, she said, Marshall, you can have the biggest room in the house so long as you can pack all your shit into it.
oh, all
So
in
I
all.
said, okay. And so it's gotten denser and denser and denser. But, I love it. I've been collecting since I was 6 years old.
Wow. Okay, I'm seeing a lot of stuff back there from Star Wars, Star Trek.
Yeah, there's a lot of Simpsons there. There's a lot of Star Wars there. There's Darth Vader's sort of all over the place. Darth Vader is probably the number one thing that I collect. I'm just most obsessed with Darth Vader for some reason. He's not like my favorite character in Star Wars, but it's like, who wants to collect Han Solos? I mean, he's just like a human guy. You might as well collect Ken dolls. Darth Vader is by far the coolest looking character, so I just seem to gravitate in that direction. But I am a gatherer. I hunt, but not with a spear. I hunt with a credit card. I used to go to collectors marts all the time. Nowadays, everything seems to be online, but I used to love going to big collectors marts in the 80s and the 90s, before everything was, on eBay, and just hunting for all these little treasures, hunting for trading cards and comic books, and just finding things that I never knew existed that suddenly I absolutely had to have, or I would die if I didn't get. So it's like, and this is what happens when you hunt and gather on a massive scale for almost 50 years.
Wow. Okay, so you started with
Madness.
old school collecting. eBay's
Oh
made
yeah,
it a bit too easy. Of course, the postage isn't
it is
easy.
a lot easier. It is a lot easier than it used to be. But I mean, collecting has changed anyway, because when I started, collectibles weren't the same. Collectibles became collectibles because they came to be coveted by adult nerds, whereas though they were created as toys to be played with by children now, and so them being in their box was important, because most people would just throw the box away. Today, everything is collected as a collectible for a collector's market. Rarity is sort of built in, so like Funko or whoever will put out fewer of one thing, and he'll have a hand slightly different or whatever, or have be a different color scheme, or it'll go in the dark, or there'll be a different sticker on it, and they'll say, okay, that one is super rare, and suddenly everyone will go crazy. But it's sort of like artificially manipulated. you know. Whereas for me, when I was younger, it was like getting things from America, and getting good condition things from America, Star Wars stuff, and before that, $6 Million Man stuff, or Planet of the Apes, original Planet of the Apes, like Mego figures and stuff, all of which were produced, made for kids, not for collectors. They didn't have that scarcity deliberately kind of baked into it. They just became rare because most kids opened them up, played with them, as I did, and so they just became sort of naturally rare. So when people say today, because I unbox everything, when people say today you should, how dare you unbox your stuff? How dare you? It's like, well, for one thing, all these Funko Pops that you're getting, you're keeping them in the box. So are thousands of other people, and it's like, it's never going to be worth anything. It's not going to be worth anything in your lifetime. It's like, what are you doing it for? I see a lot of people, and fair enough if it makes them happy, but with walls just full of Funko Pops still in the boxes, and it looks to me like a sort of a shop. And it's just not my aesthetic. I just like lots of things out of the boxes, and okay, it's worth less, but that'll be my kid's problem because I'm not going to sell it anyway.
Okay. What wasn't there a
I feel like I went off on a tangent there.
Well, no.
This is going to build up to this, but there you go. This
is very interesting. I'm typically when I do an interview, I have a good set of questions. Yet with this one with you, as we discussed, I'm trying something a little new and trying to go a little bit less scripted. And I think right off the bat, that collection behind you is a huge standout that people really are going to be interested in knowing about. Now, wasn't there a Star Wars action figure where there was only like 8 of them sold in Colombia or something?
There have been some super rare Star Wars action figures, and I don't have any of those. I do have some quite rare things. I suppose the rarest Star Wars thing I've got a prototype Chewbacca mug, which was one of the very first Star Wars kind of items ever produced in 77, 78 in California by a company called Cali Originals. And apparently the Chewbacca is like one of George Lucas's favorite Star Wars collectibles. And I've got like a prototype of that. And but it's not just that I love that item. It's also when it was 1984 when Star Trek 4 came out. The Star Trek
sounds about right.
So yes. I was there with my mum. I was 15 years old, and she'd never driven in the States before. We were just on holiday, just me and her. And we just got to LA, and I got a phone book, and I tried to find like the nearest collector's store, and it was on the other side of the freeway because that was just the first one I found. And my mum sort of she drove me there, and she was like super nervous driving, and she was holding the wheel, and she had her face right up at the glass, and but she did it for me, and she said, okay, take your time. And I went in there, and I just bought out the store, including this amazing mug, and then we went to see Star Trek 4, and it was just like the perfect day. And so for me, not only is it a super item, rare and probably quite valuable, but it also to me represents the lengths that my mum would go to make me happy and to be a good mum. And so it couldn't mean more. It couldn't possibly mean more. So yeah, that is definitely my favorite item and my rarest Star Wars item. But that said, I've got lots of bits and pieces that I've been a journalist since I was 18 years old, and I've always pushed to interview my heroes. Everybody from Adam West to Ray Harryhausen and film directors and actors and comic book artists, and I always tried to get autographs, or if I interview comic book artists, I would get them to draw me, do a little sketch. I got a picture of the Spirit by Will Eisner. Gilbert Shelton did the fabulous Furry Freak Brothers for me, and so I've Chuck Jones drew a Wile E. Coyote and Roadrunner for me. So I've always taken advantage of my position to add to my collection, and so many of the most valuable things that I've got are things that I sort of got to got created for me on the spot, basically.
Okay. Now, when you picked up the Chewbacca mug here in California, what city were you in? Were you in San Francisco, LA?
I think I was in LA,
Okay.
I was in and around LA. I have a incredibly tenuous grasp on geography, so if you press me more, I'll just sound really stupid. Let's just say LA and leave
Okay.
it at that, because I don't remember. I mean, honestly, I've traveled all around the world, and I could tell you about the adventures I had there, but I will probably forget the names of most of the places that I was. It's just I'm a bit dyslexic when it comes to geography.
Okay, understood. There's something that if you make it over here to San Francisco, there's something that you definitely need to see. It's the Lucasfilm's headquarters, and it is tourist friendly. In order to get,
Oh, they're letting tourists in now.
yeah,
My brother used
oh
to
yeah,
live in San Francisco, so I've been to San Francisco several times. I love the climate there,
hmm
and some great comic shops there as
oh
well. But
yeah.
I've never been to Lucasfilm.
Yeah, it's actually it's tourist friendly. You know, they obviously know people love Star Wars and they can't keep the fans away. So what you do when you pull up to the parking lot, there's a guard in the guard shack and you just tell him we are here to see Yoda, and that's it. You're cleared. And there is a Yoda statue right in the front of the door
I'm
of
familiar with that. Yes.
the office there, and they have the a lot of the movie costumes. There's a Starbucks inside there, which is Star Wars themed. But somehow they missed a menu item. They should have Boba Fett boba tea, and somehow they missed that one. But
Well, I
so
think you should write to them, and you probably
totally.
just take over from Kathy Kennedy and just shepherd them in that direction, because that would be, I think it needs to happen.
Okay, well, if and when you make it over here to San Francisco, let me know, and I will take you over there to the Starbucks at
I will
Lucasfilm's
definitely take you up
headquarters.
on that. I will
Okay, awesome.
definitely.
I'll buy you a tea.
Do they have a
Um,
gift shop there so you can spend some Star Wars bucks?
you know what? I don't think so, and I think I
Oh
was
my
very
God,
surprised
that
that
is
they
a
did
that
not.
is a lost opportunity.
Yeah, well, it's actually it's a business. You know, it's a business headquarters. There are people there working, and it's not for tourists, but they know that, the tourists are going to come by. Tourists are there all the time.
It's a
From
mecca. It
Yeah,
is. It is. You got to
it
go and
is.
pay your respects. I get
Yeah,
that.
make your pilgrimage to the Yoda statue. And it's really fun. So, okay, now let's get to the book which you just took home a Rondo for, Masters of Makeup Effects: A Century of Practical Knowledge, which you wrote with Howard Berger. There we go. Nice.
The Century of Practical Magic.
Okay.
Practical Magic was actually one of the original titles that we thought we might use, but then they said it sounded like a book about magic tricks, and we had to figure out how to get makeup effects in the title, and
Mhm.
so a bit of alliteration, Masters of Makeup Effects. It sounded good. Plus, of course, we did interview many of the masters of that incredible art, so it was appropriate. But we still worked in the practical magic, because this is very much focused on the hands-on approach of movie makeup and creature making.
Okay. And how did you come to write this with Howard Berger? Did you already know him? Are you guys friends?
Well, yes. I interviewed Howard in 2006 for the Sunday Express newspaper in London, and Howard had just won an Oscar for heading up the creature effects, makeup effects for the Chronicles of Narnia, the first of the Narnia movies,
Hmm.
The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, and it was coming out on DVD. And Disney asked Howard if he would come to London and do some interviews to promote it. So as part of that, Howard suggested to them that it might be more fun if, as well as doing interviews, he would actually make the journalists up as characters from the film. So they agreed, and so I turned up to interview him for the paper, and Howard made me up as Mr. Tumnus. He said, "I'm a natural fawn, I'm quite bald. I didn't even have a beard then, so it's basically I was ready to have all the stuff applied." And he gave me a great interview. He was very fun and frank, and we really kind of connected. And because the thing about makeup effects guys is they're colossal nerds. Whereas, actors and to some extent directors and other filmmakers maybe have practiced a little bit of distance and are a little bit maybe aloof. And certainly as a journalist, when you meet a lot of actors, not all actors, but are maybe they're a bit more media savvy, and they basically keep a distance, keep a little bit of professional distance from journalists. I found that makeup effects guys, special effects guys, they all started off as monster kids, just whereas I kind of took to writing, they took to makeup, whereas I was, collecting stuff and reading comics in my bedroom, they were making masks in their bedrooms. And so we kind of started off in the same level of fandom, and that they just went off and started making movies themselves. And I went off and started writing about them, but that basically we were both of us spurred on and kind of created by this love of movies and magic and monsters. And so I found that when I met Howard, and later when we were working on the book, that we just had a real affinity for each other. And I said to Howard, I'd love to send you a copy of the newspaper when it comes out. And so he gave me his email address. And then occasionally I would reach out and say hi and ask him to do a few more interviews for different outlets of mine. And we slowly started, becoming friends and just chatting more. And we'd have a few conversations every now and then. And about a few years in, after meeting him, we kind of were talking about our book collections and how we love big coffee table movie books, and we sort of said, wouldn't it be fun if we wrote a book together one day? So light bulb went off above my head, and I thought, yeah, okay, let's do that, because Howard's a great and clever and fun guy, and is so respected in his industry and knows everybody. Howard has the keys to the kingdom. He can make everybody available to you, as he did for the book ultimately. And so we thought it'd be great to write a book of stories, not a how-to, but just a book. He said that when he and his friends get together, and he always hires his friends, people that he knows he'll work with and enjoy working with, when they get together, they tell funny stories about their lives and their careers. And he thought it would be fun if we could curate a book of stories about the fun about working in the industry, about the joy of that. And so that sounds amazing, but he was too busy to do it. He was too busy to write it with me, because he was, having this amazing Hollywood career. Basically, he was like, I've got to make 7 films with Mark Wahlberg now, or I've got to make up, Sir Tony as Alfred Hitchcock for the Hitchcock biopic. And, Howard has like 400 plus credits on the IMDb, and that's not even all of it. That's just what's there. The man is tireless. And so him taking the time to write a book, which is a massively time-consuming endeavor, it just didn't come up. But I didn't give up. I just, every 6 months or so, I would email him. We'd have a conversation. I'd say, so Howard, what about now? And he'd be like, I can't do it now. But he never said, look, just you're on the level of a stalker now, Marshall. It's like, it's enough. He was just say, look, one day, buddy, one day. And then the pandemic happened, and I
Interesting.
immediately, we were locked down. I knew it wasn't working. I knew no one was working. And so I immediately, I don't know, like the Grim Reaper on my t-shirt, I just, dialed his number with my sickle and said, let's have a conversation. We did. And I said, look, I bet you got the time now. And he agreed. And literally in one conversation, he said, yeah, okay, let's do it. And I think we stopped talking. We finished speaking 20 minutes later. I get the first text with, a list of people who we could talk to start with. And I sent him a list of sort of chapter ideas. And, we just back and forth. And for the next 2 years, just like every day, working with Howard, arranging the interviews, working on our question set for everybody, then editing the answers and getting our copy and working on it together to get it into readable form, deciding to make it purely stories, and then gathering thousands and thousands of pictures. I kind of focused for the most part on the word side. Howard focused on the picture side. And what he did was instead of just going to some photo library and getting the same pictures everybody's seen a million times before when you open those sort of movie books, he asked all of our contributors to dig deep in their own private collections and their own archives for photos from their childhood, from their teen years, from their first attempts, as personal kind of design as kids, and then professional, their first steps in the industry. And they just sent us all these amazing pictures that no one had seen before. And we just had it was like an embarrassment of riches, as they say. We just had so much amazing stuff, and we just whittled it down, and we got the best stories and the best pictures. And but that whole process, from him saying yes to the book coming out, that was a good year and a half, and then we spent 6-8 months promoting it. It was like, which was a job in itself, but it was amazing. The people that we spoke to were incredible, and it was amazing. During the pandemic, I had the time of my life. I was here. I didn't get to meet anybody in person, but 2-3 times a week, I was like, it was me and Howard and Rick Baker, or me and Howard and Tom Savini, or Kevin Yeager, or Bruce Campbell, or Robert Englund. We interviewed not just the sort of mega famous, top tier names that everybody recognized, but we interviewed so many other incredible talents, people who have worked. If you don't know their names, you'll know the makeup creations that they're responsible for. And we got the inside story on so much. And it's not just monsters, it's also age makeups and likeness makeups. We learned so much. Even Howard said he learned a lot about his friends while we were doing it, because it's one thing chatting and shooting shit with your friends, but it's another to actually sit down for 2 hours and straight interview them about stuff. But I got so much more out of them than we would have if it had been me talking to them, because their guards were down and they were relaxed and they were chatting amongst friends. And so it was quite a thing, quite a privileged position to be part of that. And we sent everybody their quotes. We gave everybody a chance to say yay or nay, and to make any edits or suggestions. Nobody got sidetracked. No, we didn't mess with anybody. We didn't say, oh, look, that's a great story. We're definitely going to put it in, whether you like it or not. There was none of that. Everybody was happy with what went in. And very few people actually retracted stuff. I was actually surprised, because some of the stories that we've got in the book are crazy. And they were just, happy for them to go in. So I feel like I've answered like 12 questions already, and I should probably give you a chance to jump in and say something, because I'm sorry. This is just I'm very enthusiastic about my book. I'm very proud of it. And so.
Well, you've summed it up. That's exactly what I was wanting to know. And on the Rondo Award, do you each get a physical Rondo Award trophy?
Yes, we do.
You each do?
Yes, we do. The weird thing is that we didn't even know that we'd been nominated. Like, I voted a few years ago in the Rondos a few times, and I think once you voted, then you're on their mailing list, and you'll get sent details of you're sent details of the nominees every year after that, and invited to vote again. So everybody who voted for us this year are now probably on the Rondo mailing list. And so it came out. I received an email from them about 2 weeks, I think, after the Rondos were announced. They hadn't reached out to tell us that we were nominated.
Really?
And I was looking at the nominees, and I actually had a tinge of regret that I didn't do more to put us up for it, because I really like the Rondos, and as busy as we were, I just really felt like I'd missed a trick in not putting our book up for a Rondo. And so imagine my surprise when I'm going through the list, and it's in there. Our book is in there. Like, we didn't even ask or campaign for it or put it up for it or reach out to them. It was just there. And then I sort of lost my mind and spent the rest of the time, campaigning. It's not super cool to campaign as hard as I did, perhaps for the award. I know that, like, if you're nominated for an Oscar, for example, the studios can campaign on your behalf, but you can't campaign on your own. It's like, it's sort of really looked down upon. And actually, if you campaign for your own win, you can actually be disqualified. But the only thing that I ever won previously, the only prize I ever won previously was in 2000. Oh no, what am I talking about? In 1984. It was the Gorman Family Prize, awarded to Marshall Julius for Form 4 English. I went to a Jewish school. It is a book. They said you can get a prize up to £10 in this one Jewish bookshop and Jewish, bric-a-brac sort of store. And I found the only thing about monsters in it, the Golem of Prague book. And so I got this when I was 15 for my English, for being most improved or something. And this was the only prize that I got before. So I'm doing all these podcasts with Howard, and when he does it in his office, he's got his Oscar and his Emmys, and he's won a shit ton of prizes. And he's very cool about it. Howard would definitely never campaign for stuff. He doesn't have to. For him, that's just sort of the icing on the cake. Nothing is about awards for him. It's just, he's very cool about it, and that's totally reasonable. I'm not cool about anything. And when I saw that there was a chance that I could actually have a statuette behind me, I just lost my mind. And I got a fairly decent social following, and we did, the book's done well and it's sold well, and I'm lucky enough to have access to a lot of people, fans of the book and supporters, and so over 3 weeks I just reached out to everybody, pretty much everybody, and my physiotherapist. I hurt my neck. I had to go to physio. I asked my physiotherapist and the receptionist to vote for me. I asked my neighbors to vote for me. I asked the people who I bump into in the park when I walk the dog to vote for me. I asked the checkout girl in my supermarket to vote for me. And so now I'm a Rondo Award winner, but I'm not sure if it's for best book or most insane campaigner. Maybe both.
Well, you did ask me to vote for you, and that's
and you didn't.
I
so it shows that I can't guarantee. I can't guarantee a vote.
Right? Yeah, I was actually unable to vote for you, your book, because I had already voted. I had no idea whatsoever that a friend of mine that I've interviewed before, John Walsh, his book,
I know John very well. Yes.
Yeah, his Doctor Who book was in the exact same category as yours. So I was shocked. In fact, there was a chat party on some forums for the Rondo Awards where people could hang out leading up to the announcement of the awards. And I was on there that night. I believe Mr. Walsh had already gone to sleep because it was in the middle of the night in London when that was announced. But I remember seeing the announcement of the winner, and I thought, wait a second. Well, I had absolutely no idea that your book was in the same category as Mr. Walsh's, and I know he wanted to win that.
Book of the year, non-fiction.
Right. So
there's only one of those. There's a fiction and a non-fiction, but there's also short stories and bloggers and podcasters. And I love that it actually represents. It gives fans and fan journalists like myself a chance to walk away with a really beautiful statuette. It's amazing. And now, I thought that John had already won. He has won a bunch of awards, and I'm sure he'll win a Rondo.
Oh, he'll get a Rondo. Yeah, he's got a couple of absolutely excellent books coming out soon. So he'll have one eventually. Now,
Definitely.
as far as getting the physical award, aren't they awarding those here in the States, like
Yeah,
in
apparently there's
Kentucky?
a convention in Kentucky
Yeah.
on June the 10th where they hand them out. But I've been in touch with David Colton, who created the awards and runs them. And he told me that Howard and I would both be receiving an award, that they're with the engravers, and that he will whack them in the post, although that's not the phrase he used. As soon as. So
Okay.
hopefully we'll get it soon. But I've already, he asked if we could record thank you speeches to play at the awards, and I already did that. I shot mine in black and white, and I cut scenes from 1931's Frankenstein in it. And so I've got basically, I'm accepting the award while the villagers are coming with pitchforks to burn down my house, and that's the sort of extra stuff that I do. I was just that excited and honored to have had such a great reception about the book, to have so many people support us, and to show their love for the book by voting for it. It just meant a huge amount. And so now I've got, award besides my English prize when I was 15. And I just couldn't be more thrilled about it, honestly.
Wonderful. Where are you going to put it?
Well, because I have space behind me, and if I put it there, you wouldn't be able to see it. I think I'm going to just have to have it on some sort of pedestal next to me, so it's sort of like this.
Okay.
And I can just go, oh yeah, my Rondo, okay. Or I'm going to have to just resort my whole thing so that actually it's right behind me. I promise you this, it will not be subtle.
Okay. All right.
You will see it.
Okay. All right.
There'll be lights on it. It's possible that when people come in the room, there'll be some sort of music rig with Hallelujah or a heavenly chorus or something. It will not be subtle.
And a disco ball.
Oh yeah, that's a great idea. Okay, you shouldn't encourage me. I'll tell my wife about the disco ball idea. She'll be thrilled.
Right. Okay, so if you're ready, let's get to the first question here.
Okay,
Okay, actually, I don't really like to ask extremely broad, open-ended questions, but this one right here is a no-brainer. I want to know, tell us about yourself. Who is Marshall Julius? And for example, what is a day in your life like?
Oh, geez. Well, I suppose that is a tough one to answer in a few words. Let me think. Who am I? I suppose I'm just a professional appreciator. I'm just a fan of things. My mum was a movie nerd before the term even existed. In the 40s and the 50s, she loved going to the movies. As a girl, she would collect the magazines. I've got lots of movie magazines from when she was a kid. She gave them to me, and I keep them safe. And when I was growing up, we didn't really watch sport in our house. My mum, Saturday afternoons, my favorite time was Saturday afternoons. We would kind of pull the sofa up in front of the TV, and on the BBC and BBC Two, like every Saturday afternoon, they'd have like double bills in the afternoons of old musicals and comedies. And so you'd see Bob Hope and Fred Astaire and old westerns and stuff. Then late at night, there'd be all the kind of Universal monsters and stuff. So I would watch cartoons in the morning. In the afternoons, I would watch, old Hollywood movies with my mum, and then I would sneak up in, late at night and watch horror movies, the old vintage. So I was pretty much glued to the TV the whole time. But my mum, she was like the special features. She would just tell me about all the actors and the stories and the studios and the directors, and she told me all the stories, and she just really made it come alive. And she was just so enthusiastic about it. And she was a huge influence on me just devoting my life to nerdery. Also, my cousin Ronald, he goes by the name of Ron these days, but I always call him Ronald still, and he accepts that from me. Ron is a producer. He produced the Twilight Zone play that was on in London, and hopefully, we'll be playing in the States, and it's amazing. And, you will hear about it. He's also one of the co-producers of the London Action Festival, which started last year and is running this year. And he invited me to be a part of that. We still, do stuff together. But he's 4 years older than me, and he was a collector before me. And I used to go around to his house. He's my mother's, his dad was my mother's only brother. And I used to go around to this house, and Ronald had, Star Wars collectibles, but not just the trading cards, but he would have the boxes that the trading cards came in. He would have the wrappers still. He had, the original Star Wars posters, and he had stuff that just boggled my mind. And I was just so freaking jealous of it all. I just wanted it all so badly. It was just like the greatest treasure to me. And so I just started collecting as soon as I could, and just everything was just, it blew my mind. And now he said, he knows he created a monster, because I just never stopped. I just, gathered and gathered and gathered and gathered, like just to the level of insanity. So I suppose I'm very compulsive. I'm incredibly obsessive. I'm emotionally arrested. I'm giant man baby. I'm all the things that you need to be a huge film and TV fan. I'm 99% of everything I wear are t-shirts, and so that is who I am. I'm just a fan who's lucky enough to be able to write to a certain standard, and was able to work as a journalist and meet my heroes, and write about them, write books about them from time to time. And then you get to a stage in your life where you've somehow managed to hang on and stay who you are, and not give in and embrace adulthood, and suddenly people are saying that you're like an elder statesman of nerdery, and suddenly you get this sort of weird level of respect, whereas before you only had disdain, where people would spit at you or throw stones at you. I mean, not maybe metaphorically, not actually, but sometimes, but where suddenly you're called a film historian, and I think that's just kind of just euphemism for old fart, but it's just, I've just hung on, and thanks to social media, where I've developed quite a decent following because of my collection, and because of kind of my history and my books, and just because everything's a huge joke to me. I know people seem to like my social. I don't get political. I don't get negative. Really, I like to create a safe space for people, and a sort of a nerdy oasis. And I don't know, it's just sort of worked for me. So who am I? I'm just somebody who loves stuff perhaps more than is normal. I don't know. I'm just driven by my obsessions and my loves, and everything comes out of that. My career comes out of that. My hobbies come out of that. My spare time, everything I am and everything I do is sort of informed by just this whole great nerdy world that I live in. I suppose if I'm anything, I've been consistent.
Okay. That's when I ran into you on Twitter, and I recall what you have just now said, that you always are positive. And I like to follow and listen to people like that, because I think it's funner, and there's there's a lot of politics on there, of course. People can't resist, but in your situation, you follow almost 100,000 people, and you have 110,000 followers on Twitter.
Yeah. I
Man.
follow most people that follow me back.
Yeah.
I want people to think that it's I want people to feel it's a two-way conversation.
Right.
I'm not interested in being sort of lofty. People DM me, I DM them back. People ask me
Right.
if I can come on their podcast. I'm thrilled to come on podcasts and to talk about stuff and myself. Clearly one of my favorite subjects is myself. I'm always happy to come on and talk about that. I'm sure I will watch this back and I'll think, oh my God, look at the ego on me.
No, 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 no. So
Completely unfounded.
it sounds like to me that you got into TV and movies at a young age with your
Oh
mom.
yeah. Oh yeah, yeah. Oh,
Okay.
absolutely. I just fell in love with it all. I just found it all incredibly fascinating. And my mum would take me to movies, most weeks. And I was just, interested in fact, I just sort of gravitated towards fantasy and horror and action and the kind of fun genres. Growing up, TV for me was, Doctor Who, obviously, and Star Trek and Logan's Run and Battlestar Galactica and I just and all the Starsky and Hutch and all the Jerry Anderson shows and I mean there was so much of it, but it wasn't as available as it was today. Now you can watch anything you want whenever you want.
Mm,
Obviously you had to know when things were on and you had to make the time to be there. And
yes.
pre-video especially, it was like, don't mess with me. I can't do that because Thunderbirds is on then, or I'm not. That was just, you just had to prioritize your life. I remember like on sunny days or, my mum saying, Marshall, don't you want to play outside? We've got a lovely big garden. Why do you want to play outside? And I'm like, Mum, the $6 Million Man is on. He's fighting Bigfoot. It's like, she said, don't you want to do something, I mean, even my mum thought I watched too much television, but my gut was, do you want to do something else? Or don't you want to do something, kind of more valuable or something? And I'd be like, what is more valuable than this? And then I grew up to become a film critic, and it's like, suck it.
There
Like
we go.
it all worked. Actually, my mum never really hassled me. My mum was just really indulged me in all my interests and my loves. She probably should have torn me away from the TV sometimes, but I was just the monster that she made. So.
Okay. And turned into a film critic. That's
And
very
believe me, I go
interesting.
negative then. There's nothing better than if you hate a film. The two great pleasures are watching a film that you absolutely love and making it your mission that everybody goes to see it, and seeing a film that you absolutely despise, that bores you to tears, that you actually feel is a personal affront to you, that feels like a slap in the face and a punch in the gut, that feels like an assault and that you hate it so much, and then putting all of your kind of prowess and venom into describing exactly how terrible it is and the experience of watching it and why everybody should avoid it. So it's like film.
Hmm.
The only things I don't like writing about are meh sort of films. It's like, yeah, it was okay. It's like, yeah, it was, there are a few laughs. It was okay. I watched it. It was a good time waster. It's like hate films like that. you know I think it's really fun to write about films you love, and it's really fun to write about films you hate. So it's like I have no problem going negative, but as a rule, when it comes to my social, I'd rather I don't I'm not I just want to talk about the things that I love and share the things that I love, of which there are kind of many, manyfold. There's just so much stuff that I love. So it's like, why I don't need to go negative.
Right.
Everybody, so many other people can go negative. And believe me, even when you're talking about stuff that you love, people will go negative. It's like, I'll say happy birthday to this person, and someone will go, oh, do you know that, like 60 years ago, they once used they once said something racist, or they once, gotten convicted, or, they once did this, or they once did that. And it was like, I honestly, most of the time I had just had no idea about those things. But it's like, okay, that is not a good thing that they did. But I also don't think that you should necessarily cancel people because of the lowest thing they've ever done, because I think most people have done pretty shitty stuff in their life. I mean, everybody's done some pretty shitty stuff, and it's just most people don't do it in a public eye. Most people have said and done things that they regret, and I really think that they probably would not want to be judged for that one thing that they did. And so this whole kind of cancel culture, it doesn't sit well with me at all. I'm not talking about, the Harvey Weinsteins and stuff. I think, those people can fuck off, obviously, but not But as a rule, I think it's just live and let live, for the most part.
Okay. Well, people need to definitely check you out on Twitter because I enjoy reading everything that you have to say, and I caught that constant positivity, and then
I know it's
started.
sickening, isn't it? It's just like it's like treacle, but I like it.
Yeah, yeah. The once somebody gets off into your link tree, there is a good day to be spent. And, like I told you before we met this morning, I was listening to your podcasts this morning, and I haven't even scratched the surface yet. So, all right, now you did mention that you have heard about that quirky British drama called, what was it, Doctor Who?
Oh yeah, I have heard something
Yeah.
about Doctor Whoever for sure. Yeah, I did. Well, when I was small again, I started watching Doctor Who right at the very, very end of the Pertwee years. I mean, literally, I think I watched the Kettlewell robot, the K1, the giant sort of with the shoulder pads, the big tin thing, and then it gets very small, and then it turns into then he turns into Tom Baker. As I remember, I think I started watching it literally in the last Pertwee story, and
Hmm.
then I remained glued to the Tom Baker years all throughout. Then when it changed, I sort of lost interest. Honestly, I kind of tried to stick with it, but it was like I love Tom Baker. Like, I mean, my dad passed away soon after. When did Tom Baker start? What year did he
Oh
start? Was it
Lord,
sort of like
1975 or something?
something? Yeah, okay. So it was like
Somewhere.
about halfway through about 2 or 3 years into that, my father passed away, and I used to my TV heroes were often people who I thought, oh yeah, he could be my dad. Like I didn't really know how the dynamics would work. Like they would somehow come and meet my mum, but I thought if it wasn't, I thought it either had to be Doctor Who, meaning Tom Baker, or Mr. Rourke from Fantasy Island, because I thought I would like to live on Fantasy Island. My whole life, it's pretty much a fantasy anyway. And although in that show everything always turned dark, I would like to think that mine would be the comedy story that didn't go dark. I didn't want to be in the scary part of it because Fantasy Island always went a bit freaky, and it's like I didn't want that, and I feel like I've gone off on a massive tangent now. But okay, so the thing about Doctor Who with me was that I didn't realize that it was fiction. I was very young when I started watching it. I was like 5 or 6, and I just I think I if I had a concept of reality and fantasy and fiction and them as being separate things, I'm not sure it was that well defined, because on Saturday nights when I would watch Doctor Who, I would sit cross-legged, right nose up to the television, and I just believed that he was Doctor Who. Like I had no concept of him being an actor. I didn't. My brothers would laugh at me because I would call him Doctor Who, like he was a real person, because I thought he was a real person, and Sarah and Harry and or the Brigadier and all of that. I just it was like I knew that it was real. It was like before reality TV was even invented, I just thought that it was reality TV. Like somehow they just had cameras following them around, going off on adventures. Um, the it was the reality and fantasy thing became especially confusing for me when my dad, who used to run and own a chain of clothes shops called Austin's Menswear, and he opened a store, and every time he did, he would get like a celebrity. He would hire a celebrity to come in and sign autographs. He would get press in the newspapers. It would be a great way of plugging the opening of the store. So I don't know if I think he did it for me. But I mean, no one was bigger than Tom Baker at the time, so he hired Tom Baker to come and to be at the opening of this Austin's Menswear store. And um and but he didn't turn up as Tom Baker. He turned up as Doctor Who. He came in full costume as Doctor Who.
Hmm.
When I arrived there with my mum and my cousin Ronald, and my cousin Justin, he was standing on the roof of my dad's shop as Doctor Who. Outside the door of the shop was the TARDIS. I mean, I don't know how, nowadays the BBC, they would never let the actors go dressed as their characters. They wouldn't take these expensive screen props and they would put them outside. But Tom Baker's like, oh yeah, guys, just come on with a van and put the TARDIS there. And so the TARDIS was there and Doctor Who was there. And I was 6 and it was like, I said to my brothers, look, he's there. It's Doctor Who. And I knew that my dad had sort of invited him to open the store, but I just thought, look, even Doctor Who needs money sometimes. It was like it makes sense. It's like my dad asked if he would come and sign some autographs, and so he's standing in the store giving people up. I mean, it was heaving. There were hundreds of people in there, and it was a scrum to get to him for autographs. And I'm standing next to him because I know that my dad is the person who got him in. So I felt a definite sense of ownership, and it was like nobody was pulling me away. I was literally standing next to him the whole time asking him questions, but not as like Tom Baker's Doctor Who. And I'm like, where's Sarah and Harry? Where's your favorite place in the TARDIS? Where would you like to go? Is it a drag being stuck with UNIT? And I just like question after question after question, and he did his best to answer, and he was like amazingly patient. But as a sort of out of exasperation, after like half an hour, he kind of said really loudly, but he said, "Who is this kid?" And like everyone in the whole shop just sort of burst out laughing at me, and I loved it. It was like the best attention. It's like I was absolutely thrilled. The one thing I didn't understand was he gave me an autograph and it said Tom Baker, and I was like, who the hell is Tom Baker? I was like, why didn't you write Doctor Who? Like I just, I guess sometime after that I kind of put 2 and 2 together, but I was pretty stupid, as and it took me a long time to get it. But I mean, that whole incident, I kind of regard that as my first celebrity interview, I suppose. But that whole incident was just unbelievably magical. And I'll send you a picture. I'll send you a few pictures of things that we talked that you can flash up on the screen. But there's one that somebody took my cousin, that Ronald showed me a few years ago, that I hadn't seen before. And it's him looking at the camera, Ronald looking at the camera, Tom Baker signing an autograph for my cousin, Justin, and me just looking up at Tom Baker, like with this grin on my face and love in my eyes. Like, it was like just the absolute, like the cat that got the cream, like just the greatest incident in the history of all incidents. And so, yeah, I mean, I've written about that many times, and I've interviewed Tom Baker a few times. It's having realized that, he's an actor, but I mean, honestly, as a person, he's really no less magical than Doctor Who. And the few times that I've interviewed him, he's just been everything that I kind of hoped for, and incredibly nice and generous and eccentric and amazing. So, for me, I'm not against other Doctor Who's, but nothing could come close to to Tom Baker, not even a million miles in all of time and space. Tom Baker is my man.
Wow. That is an unbelievable story. I've never heard anything like that before. That's crazy.
It was wild. It was wild.
Yeah. So you said you have interviewed Tom Baker before?
Oh yeah. I used to work for Blockbuster. I used to do all their online blogging and stuff. I ghost wrote some stuff for him. I have interviewed him for the Sunday Express, and I've interviewed him a few times. He was amazing. I told him I brought pictures of when he opened my dad's store, and he's just very generous and funny and wacky. I kind of love the guy.
Okay, so I think I already know the answer to what I was going to ask you next, because you've mentioned Twilight Zone, $6 Million Man, Fantasy Island. Did you watch Love Boat also by any chance?
Only because the theme tune got, as a earworm, got stuck in my head. And
yeah,
so I preferred the sort of fantasy stuff. Honestly, right. Star Trek was my jam. I liked, after Tom Baker, I liked Doctor Who, but I kind of really loved Star Trek. Okay. So after I kind of had my Doctor Who years, and I kind of discovered Star Trek, I was very much kind of a Trekkie, and remain so. I love Star Wars.
Right.
as well. But Star Trek TV wise is just like catnip for me. I love it.
Okay. Yeah, the way I see those is Star Wars is sort of for weekend entertainment, and then Star Trek is for daily consumption.
I think that's a very nice way of putting it. Yeah, I would
Yeah.
go with that. Because
Yeah.
there's basically thousands of hours of Star Trek, and
Mm,
Star Wars is basically the original trilogy for me and the first two seasons of The Mandalorian.
okay. I was just going to ask that. So, did you start watching the original 60s television series?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean,
Okay.
it was constantly repeated, so I didn't see it originally because I was born in 1969, which is the year that it ended.
Right.
But it was always, from the sort of mid to late 70s, it was on TV all the time. So I used to watch Star Trek, quite religiously.
Okay. And if there's so many Star Treks now. I think there's what, three or four different television series on right now. Um,
Yes, yes,
yeah,
yeah. Well, there's a couple of animated series, and there's Picard and Discovery and Strange New Worlds. So I think there's like 5 Star Trek shows on at the moment. And I got
right.
to say that not all of those are necessarily kind of my favorites, and I haven't quite embraced the animated side yet. Although I did really like the animated adventures from the 70s, where it was voiced by the original cast.
Hmm.
I think the last series of Picard was absolutely spectacular, just a mad nostalgic whirl. And I actually watched most of it just sort of tearing up. Like my wife, she's not really into Star Trek. She said, what did you do last night? I said, well, I watched the Picard finale, and I just cried all the way through. And she's like, well, did you like it? I'm like, no, I loved it. It was just the best thing ever. And I really like Strange New Worlds because it's just this wonderful kitschy 60s vibe, and I think that they nail it beautifully. And so yeah, I mean, I do. My favorite Star Trek shows are probably I mean, I love the original series, but I love the Next Gen as well. And I think that even Enterprise, the third season of Star Trek Enterprise, was, I would stand up against as one of the best seasons of any Star Trek series ever. And I mean, Deep Space Nine was, I mean, I'm probably saying that my favorite Star Trek show is every Star Trek show. Yes, so I'm not very good at picking that, and I don't think I can actually.
So the as far as the movies, do you have a favorite Star Trek movie?
I'm supposed to say Star Trek 2, but I think that Star Trek 2 is beginning to date a little bit. I know that's sacrilege. It's still really good, but actually I think that Star Trek 4 is my Star Trek 4 of the original run is great. I mean, it's really fun, and it's still fun. And I think that I think the more humor that there is, and I love time travel stories as well,
Mm.
but I think the more humor that there is, it helps it makes it sort of it's sort of protection against dating. I think that if it has a sense of humor about itself, if it enjoys itself, and it sort of has a bit of a tongue-in-cheek aspect to it, a bit winky, I just think it has slightly more longer lasting. I also think Star Trek First Contact is
Mm.
is amazing. So I suppose that 4 and First Contact are my favorites.
Well, that's just so happens to be mine as well. I like the fact that the Star Trek 4 was set in San Francisco, and then of
Yes, of
course,
course.
yeah, First Contact. The music is gorgeous. I mean, I have actually put that movie on just to listen to the music. So,
Well, it's
okay,
Jerry Goldsmith, isn't it? Jerry Goldsmith is a just unbelievable genius. I think that
mhm.
Jerry Goldsmith is every bit as good as John Williams, and is up there in my top 5 film composers of all time, along with Bernard Herrmann and John Williams. I think he's absolute master. In fact, the best concert I ever went to in my whole life was a Jerry Goldsmith concert. It was incredible.
Oh,
It was like
really?
5 years before he died, and he played all his greatest hits. His great TV themes. He played the Voyager theme. I think he did the Voyager theme. Yeah, and Planet of the Apes, Twilight Zone, the movie, just so many classics. And he told stories from his career, and he set the scene for it. And it was just like, I was just like in absolute nerd heaven. There's just like, there's nowhere else I'd rather be anywhere in the world. There's nothing else I'd rather be doing than this. Is exactly where I want to be. This is the best place in the whole world right now. Like,
Wow.
so that felt good. I really enjoyed that concert. If it's not obvious from the way I described it, I really did enjoy that concert.
It sounds like it. Yeah, it sounds
Well,
pretty
good.
obvious.
Yeah,
So,
because I've still not seen John Williams in concert.
okay.
I was going to see him this year. In fact, Howard, because I went to America, I went to the States and spent 10 days. Howard put me up and put up with me for 10 days while we did a bunch of publicity for the book. And I was going to go the week of John Williams's concert at the Hollywood Bowl. And Howard had tickets for us, but then the book got bumped a few weeks. And so my trip got bumped a few weeks, and I couldn't go for the John Williams concert. And that was like the opposite of my experience of going to Jerry Goldsmith. That was like an unbelievable bummer. That was like, oh
Yeah.
my God, because the guy's not getting any younger.
Yeah.
And so Howard sending me videos from it and pictures, and like, and here's a clip where everybody's got their lightsabers out while it's playing, the Imperial March. And it's like, I'm thinking, I just want to die now.
Yeah. Well, I've had the opportunity to see him once. And I hope, is he still touring? Do you know?
I don't know if he tours, but I mean, he does the Hollywood Bowl concert every year. So I'm not sure. I don't think he's, he's quite as sprightly as he was, but, God bless him. The guy is just one of the great geniuses of our time, I think.
No doubt. No doubt.
What's your favorite John Williams theme?
Well, I like all of his works. And what I kind of wonder is if Star Wars itself would have ever been anything other than a dusty Betamax videotape B movie off in the back shelf of a video store, had it not been for the music of John Williams.
Well, you could say the same about Jaws. I mean, you could say the same. There's so many films that have just been elevated by his music. I mean, for me, it's hard for me to pick anything over Star Wars, because that is just the film of my life. But and by Star Wars, I mean, Star Wars, which is the film that we all called Star Wars when Star Wars came out, the original film Star Wars. Nobody called it Star Wars Episode 4 or Episode 4.
It wasn't called that.
When Star Wars came out, it was Star Wars. When Empire Strikes Back, it wasn't Star Wars, The Empire Strikes Back. It was The Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi. There's so when I say Star Wars, but for me, my favorite John Williams theme is the fanfare to Superman the movie. I think if ever there was a piece of music written that made you feel like you could actually just fly, it's that. And I just think it's everything that I love about his music. It's nostalgic, it's rousing, it's epic, it's sort of intimate, it's emotional, it's fun. It's like, it's just all the best of everything, I think, is what his music is. And, it's just everything that you felt. Like when I first saw that film, and I loved Superman the movie so much, it's like you hear people say that when you taste something or when you smell something, it triggers incredibly deep memories. For me, when I hear a bit of music from a film I really loved, it immediately takes me back to when I first saw it and to how I felt when I watched it. And so when I listen to that Superman theme, I'm like sitting there kind of 9 years old and next to my mum, just completely my eyes popping out and completely believing that a man could fly and just being absolutely thrilled by the whole thing, thrilled to pieces. So I love that march.
Okay, now very interesting. So obviously you're a music fan as well, and I'm finding that in interviewing people that have talents in particular areas, that you may have an author or an actor or stage actor where they're not only off into arts in one area, but it seems to be multiple areas, and an appreciation of music seems to be very consistent, um, from what I'm learning in this interview series. Now, I had asked you for 90 minutes, and we're running up to where we got about 20 left. So,
Well,
let me.
it's okay because I'm just
Okay.
a massive talker, so I'm not going to hold you to it.
Well,
Just don't say,
okay.
and let's see if we can sneak past the limit.
Right.
Although I don't know
Okay.
who'll be watching by this stage, but let's just keep at it.
Okay, yeah, I've got another probably just a half a dozen questions here, and a few of
Go
them
for it,
you've
punch
already
it. Have
answered.
we
So
actually answered already many of your questions?
yes, yes, yeah, like Mr. How you met Mr. Berger, which Howard Berger, which you've already covered that, and I wanted to just briefly touch on the actual physical aspect of writing a book. I mean,
Mm.
do you now this is an ongoing joke in this interview series. Do you take a blank piece of paper and stick it in the typewriter and then just type the title and by Mr. Julius, or is there more to writing a book than that? What was the physical process of actually getting this story to be documented?
No,
And
that's a great question, and it is a Herculean task putting a book together, especially when you're writing about a great many different things. So it's not like a novel, which is, I mean, an incredibly difficult thing to do and not something that I've ever attempted, not yet anyway. But when you're writing a film book, it's not so much one big job as 10,000 medium jobs. So I'm a huge list maker, and I try to be quite organized, although sometimes I lose my lists, or sometimes I make a list and I just don't look at it very closely. So I'm sort of a little bit insane about the way I go about things. But I try not to think about the final moment when it's all finished. I just think, what do I need to do next? What do I need to do next? What do I need to do tomorrow? What do I need to
Mhm.
accomplish by the end of this week? And so I'm kind of compartmentalize. I'm not even going to try and pronounce that word. It's too late now. But I kind of just set myself a series of tasks and go for it. So the first thing with Howard, the first thing that we did was we agreed on the sort of general format of it. We like the idea of it being mostly quotes, because we thought that we're going to have a word count of 60 or 70,000 words, and if we wanted to interview 60 or 70 of kind of Hollywood legends, that means that you basically got 1,000 words or less for everybody. And if we're going to interview everybody for 2 hours plus, that is 20,000 words a person, easy, when you're transcribing it. So you're already looking at cutting down, like 80%, 90% of what everybody says. You're just, hacking that off. And so it's you have to decide. We had to decide who we're going to speak to, what we were going to cover, how we were going to build up the book. We basically did most of the interviews, and I was transcribing it, and we realized that we decided that we didn't want it to be a sort of a linear thing. We wanted it to be we wanted to break up the quotes by subject, so it wouldn't be by per person or anything. It would be beginnings, it would be early in the career, there'd be an advice section, there'd be things on bloody makeups and gore, there'd be things on different kinds of monsters and age makeups and stuff. So we did all these interviews, and some people had more interesting things to say about one thing than another, or some people specialized in a few other things and so as we were transcribing it, I would kind of pull out a quote and say, okay, this quote, it was good for this chapter and that chapter, and over the period of doing all of the interviews, we had all the chapters building up. And then a few chapters actually kind of thought, okay, that's not really coming together. We'll just lose that, and we'll kind of move these things over here. And so but I love all that. It's like you could just see it building up, and you're moving things around, and it's just it's very sort of great for an obsessive compulsive person like myself, just chipping away at it. It's like sculpture almost. Like you just got all this stuff and you're just sort of, positioning everything. You're just getting it to exactly what it needs to be. And when it's done, and then you write the introductions and, I feel like I'm just rambling, and there's a million other levels, not least of which is pitching the damn thing, because before we did too many interviews, we had to pitch it to many different publishers and see who would be interested and who would be a good fit, and who's the right, what they would do with it, how they would promote it, and what freedoms they would give us. And it's just an enormous undertaking. Howard said, and Howard's used to working on the biggest movies ever made. Howard said he had no idea that writing a book would be such an enormous task.
Wow.
He was quite surprised, and I wouldn't have wanted to do it without him. But I think between the two of us, it was fun. We literally obsessed over every detail. Even after we delivered the words, they would send us the pages, and we would just come back to them with 1,000 notes. Like, can you please move the picture this way? Can you switch this picture? And then we wrote all the captions. And, it was just like an ongoing process. It's just, I'm not sure I'm really describing the process terribly clearly.
No, this is very interesting. And it definitely doesn't sound easy.
But what it was amazing, and I just loved it. It was a lot of hard work, but it was incredible having access to all these amazing people, and they were all so open and so frank about their lives and so funny about it. And I was just and then so generous in letting us actually in not saying no, you can't include that. I mean, James McAvoy, who to some extent owes Howard his career in a way. I mean, he's a great actor. He was always going to do very well. But when he was, before he was anybody, and he came into audition for Mr. Tumnus, Howard, who, Mr. Tumnus was like the a character of that whole film. Howard really, really liked James McAvoy and really pushed for him to be cast in the role. And he and James really loves Howard, and was just really happy to chat with us for the book, and told us some fantastic stories, and including one really insane story where he was in a castle during filming, and he was sleeping in this chamber where it was all stone and it was spooky, and there was a fireplace at the end, and as the fireplace was dying, he woke up in the middle of the night, and the fireplace was dying and the embers were glowing red, and he thought, oh God, this is really spooky. I really shouldn't start thinking about anything scary. And then his mind turned to The Exorcist, which he saw as a kid and freaked him out. And he said, I don't know if he'd what he'd been smoking that night, but he sort of had a bit of a psychotic incident, it seems, and he's standing on the bed screaming at the devil, saying, come take me, you bastard. And like, he completely flipped out. And he told us this story, and I thought, this is so mad. I thought, you're never going to let us use this story in the book, but fine, I'll write it up in the hopes that he'll say yes, because we ran it all past everyone. I sent them off to him, and I don't know if he actually, read the quotes that I sent. I like to think so, because he wrote back, he said, yep, go for it. Everything's fine. And I thought, this is mental. I mean, if you read that story in the book, it's so hilarious. And there are lots of stories in the book that you just, you think, wow, this is what it's like to make a movie. It's an incredible world. I've always been very interested in films and filmmaking, as clearly. But Howard sort of opened the door for me and let me in, and I felt like very privileged to be sort of an insider on the project, and for everybody to be so welcoming to me, and everybody's just so nice and friendly and approachable. And so I suppose in writing it, what I wanted was to give everybody who reads the book that same sort of insider sense. Like, when you're reading it, you're kind of like at a bar with or dinner, or hanging out in the makeup trailer with these guys, and they're just telling you their best stories. And I wanted people to feel like they were there and they were being told those stories. And that's why we did it as quotes. We wanted it to be as immediate and personable as possible. And from what I can tell, that sort of worked out.
Okay.
It seems like we achieved exactly what we set out to do, which is super rare and incredibly gratifying. And then to get an award for it is like, it's just like real validation.
Right. Wow. That is absolutely beautiful. It seems like you were meant to do that.
Oh,
And
I felt like it's
yeah,
definitely the greatest thing I've ever done. I mean, this book
right.
is honestly, it is. I've written other books. I've worked on many different things, but I mean, this is just this was the best thing I ever did, and it was the most fun. And
Okay.
it was kind of amazing to get it done and to see it out, and the things that we did to promote it were incredible. And I just, I miss it. I would have been happy for the process just go on and on forever because it was just incredible. I mean, so our first signing was at Dark Delicacies, which is the most wonderful bookshop and collector's store in LA. It's run by a fantastic guy called Del Howson, who looks like evil Santa Claus, but he's such a nice guy. He's a writer as well and really talented. And he runs this store, and he rented the store, the building next door. And sorry, Del, if you're watching this, for calling you Evil Santa. He's an amazing guy, and he we gathered like over 20 of our contributors. I think there are about 25 of us in all, because we had like about 70 people contributing to the book, and many of them were working in LA. And Howard invited everybody who'd written for the book to come and be part of our first signing. And so the first signing that we had, there was a table, and it was like 25 people long, with Howard and I at the end, and just like one legend after another. And it was incredible. People who bought the book for no extra price got to queue up and just meet everybody and get everybody to sign. People left that signing with like 25 autographs in their book. Wow. And it was, I mean, by the most like a roster of Emmy winners and Oscar winners and people who'd created like the most famous things, the makeups that are just absolutely iconic. And that day was just the best day of my life.
Awesome.
I just felt like, being there and being a part of that, and everybody was so excited to be there. They hadn't seen each other in a long time, many of the people, and they're all getting each other to sign their own books. Everybody got a book then, all the contributors, and it was just the nicest vibe. It was just the most fun. And there was a queue round the block, and I'd never experienced anything like that before. And it was like everybody was like, by the time they came to me, I thought that they would have like signing, that they'd be exhausted from it, signing fatigue. But they were like, thank you so much for putting this book together. And everybody was so kind and so nice. I mean, maybe that's Americans being nice to me. I don't know. It's like, English aren't necessarily as demonstrative as
if it was in Los Angeles and they told you that, they meant it. I can
So I
can assure you
I feel like at heart I'm kind of very I feel like I'm have a very sort of American way about me. Certainly everybody thinks so in England, despite my accent. It was just absolutely the best day. I had just the most fun, and I think about it warmly. And I remember at the time thinking, Marshall, you got to appreciate this, and this is not something that you want to just I don't want it to go off in a blur. I don't want to be like, oh wow, that was a crazy day, I can't remember anything that happened. I like kept pinching myself all the way through the day and like remember this and remember this. And fortunately,
nice.
We got so much video and so many photos from the day that it was like, it's certainly a good Abe memoir, but it was the most amazing day.
Awesome. I wish I had known about that. I would have definitely driven down there.
Yeah, it was amazing. We did some other great events. We did a on stage Q&A at the Montalban Theatre. We did a signing at the Academy Museum. I mean, it was a pretty wild week. And we also went to Disneyland, had a day off, went to Disneyland, went to Galaxy's Edge, which I hadn't been to. And we bought those amazing, expensive lightsabers, me and Howard, and ran around with our lightsabers. So that was something that was nothing to do with the book. That was just something that, you know, we said that is definitely something that we were going to do when we got there. And
yeah. My wife and I just went to the Star Wars ride in Disneyland, but in Tokyo, and the one in Tokyo, I don't remember what the name of it is. For some reason, they don't use the words Star Wars. We noticed that. I mean, you have Darth Vader, C-3PO, R2-D2. I mean, all of the characters are inside this ride. It obviously is Star Wars, but for some reason in Japan, they don't actually use those two words, Star Wars. I think it's called Galactic Adventure or something like that. But yeah, it was
it is
really
a galactic adventure, so I can't argue with that.
Yeah,
I've been to Tokyo Disneyland. It was I liked it, but
oh,
I mean the original Californian, the original was it Anaheim, the original
yeah,
Disneyland.
Anaheim
That
and
for me
Orange
is
County.
that nothing has the same magic as that. The original
yeah.
Disneyland. That was the first one that I ever went to. My brother used to live in LA, and from when I was like 9, and so I used to go over there almost every summer to the States, and
No
we always
kidding.
spent a day. Yeah, I always spent a day in Disneyland, and a day in Disneyland, a day in Universal Studios.
Okay, well, I may have ran into you because my grandmother used to work at Universal Studios, and we also used to go to Disneyland every summer, usually multiple times.
I just absolutely
Yeah.
loved it. I just freaking love Disneyland. It's amazing. And now that they have all the Star Wars stuff, you know, when I was there with Howard, I bought every single Darth Vader in Disneyland from my, like, literally every version of Darth Vader, big and small. I bought the puppet pins. I really laid down a lot of cash that day, but I couldn't have been happier about it. It was like a fantastic haul. In fact, Howard had to lend me a suitcase because I got so much stuff when I was staying with 10 days that I had to actually get an extra bag to take it all home.
You know, that's one of the best things to do when you're traveling. Number one, travel light, and then when you get to your destination, buy a suitcase and fill it up with stuff.
Oh yeah, I
And
do
bring
love
it
the
back.
stuff. I have to admit, I do love the
Yeah.
stuff. I desperately love the stuff, obviously.
Okay, so you have worked on a couple of other books. The
Yeah.
Vintage Geek quiz book, the action movie
Vintage
A to
Geek, that was the
Z.
thing that I wrote
Oh, there we go.
before, and it was what was great about the Vintage Geek was that I got the contract to write it, and then I had the idea that because I'm kind of connected with lots of people on Twitter, that I would just reach out to all these various, you know, kind of celebrities and nerd icons and ask them if they could contribute a question. And it was like, I didn't have to do that, and it was a big extra job to do that, but I thought it'd be fun. And I also thought, you know, honestly, it's a good way to promote the book, to ask people if, you know, once I made the connection with them, if they could, you know, post about it or tweet about it or meet me for a picture or something. And I mean, it was just amazing. You know, I got questions from Mark Hamill. I got George Takei. You know, gave me a Star Trek question. Mark Hamill gave me a Star Wars question. Clancy Brown gave me a question, a brutally hard question about Highlander. I got Howard and Tom Savini gave me questions. And so I got, you know, it turned out to be the hardest quiz book in the history of quiz books. It's like I didn't set out for it to be super difficult, and I didn't necessarily realize that every question was going to be the hardest question. But it's very focused on 20th century, and it's still available on 20th century kind of trivia. So you've basically got Star Trek, but just the original 60s series. You've got James Bond, but only the Roger Moore years. You've got Doctor Who, but only the Tom Baker years. I've got Disney, the first 10 years of features, you know, from Snow White on. And yeah, there was obviously Star Wars, but only the original trilogy, and not you know, and not the special editions. You know, I was very focused in the things I wanted. Also, I did the first 10 years of The Simpsons. I did Hanna-Barbera. I did, you know, it's quite a wide. I did Ray Harryhausen monster movies. 1950s science fiction, 1980s action. I did Stephen King, the first 10 years of Stephen King books and film adaptations and stuff. So it's like, and every category has like 50 questions, and they are bastards. I mean, they are really difficult, most of them. But the first half of the book is all the questions. The second half of the book is the questions with the answers, and I don't just give the answer. I also kind of write all this extra stuff because, as you can tell, I'm a wordy guy. I don't ever just have an answer. I got kind of and like one thing triggers another thing. So it's like I'll tell you, there's so many kind of film histories and kind of trivia wormholes that I went down that in that book. And so it's like, even if you don't know anything about the thing you're reading about, I like to think that if you can just read the second half of the book as like a 20th century trivia primer, as everything everybody should know about these, 20 amazing things. And I was very, very proud of it. And I think writing that was one of the things that helped, that and the pandemic were the two things that got Howard's kind of hooked to do the book with me. Although he's always very good and supportive, and he's like that. There's not a lot of competition really in the makeup industry. I think for the most part there's enough work to go around, and everybody's just excited by what everybody else is doing. And
Okay.
so it's like Howard's always been very encouraging of people, and always has been of me, certainly. And the first
Okay.
book I ever wrote, which was way earlier in the 90s, was Action.
There we go. That's from
Action movie
96, right?
83. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that was a book of action movie reviews. And it's nowadays you kind of regard all those films as like old school action, but it's a great historical document because it's basically written just at the sort of arse end of old school action. And so for me, classic action films began with, like, in the 70s with Enter the Dragon and Live and Let Die, and ended with Terminator 2. I think
Okay.
all the greatest action films, of our youth were between those two eras. About 20 years, 25 years worth of movies, and so that's what my book sort of focuses on.
Okay. Now, do you have a background in writing? Did you go to school and have formal
I
training?
got out of school when I was 18. I really didn't like. I always loved writing. But I never really found like that magical teacher who inspired me to great things. I just hated my schools, and I didn't like my teachers, and I resented being pushed into studying things that I wasn't interested in, because it was
Mhm.
like, if I was into something that I was interested in, I would just want to know everything about it. I would just be really smart about it. But if I wasn't interested, I was like incredibly dumb about it. Like, I just couldn't absorb the information. So it was like, I was just not an easy person to test, not an easy person to say, oh yes, you have done very well at university because you have a great range of interests. It's like, I can be smart about the things that I talk about and write about, and I just avoid the other things,
Okay.
like real life. Basically, like real life, I avoid anything to do with real life, because then I just sound like an idiot.
So did anyone mentor you at all? I guess not the teachers. No,
Not
did anybody
really.
ever say
No,
that
no.
you're
At
a good
school,
writer?
I kind of, I mean, I had, my mom, my cousin Ronald. I, I, I just, I got out of school after doing my A levels. I was 18 years old, and I wrote to every magazine and newspaper in London, and I said, your publication is my absolute favorite. I read it every day or every week or every month. I mean, it was all bullshit, because I don't think I'd read any of them. And I said, I would really love it if you would, give me a chance and let me come in, on any level. And I mean, it was just such a mad jump in the dark, really. But one magazine, What's On in London, they just fired someone. My editor that they was lazy and not about to, run an advert and stuff. This letter landed on his lap the day he was needed to find somebody. And he called me up, and I went to meet him, and he offered me the job on the spot. And there I was 18. And I started working. I was a classical music editor of What's On in London magazine, and I always liked classical music. But I mean, he said, "Okay, you're going to be an opera critic," and I didn't know anything. I was like this 18-year-old kid, and I like opera. I mean, arias. I didn't know anything about opera, not really, and certainly not enough to review it. I mean, I used to sit there. I found opera quite boring, actually. Sitting for 3 hours, it was more than I could take, and I would just really fight to stay awake. And I would go to, I like listening to it, but for me, it's sort of background stuff. Or while I'm driving, it's sitting through a 3 hour opera. I found it was just really pushed my endurance, and I didn't know whether they were good or not. I mean, it was just a bunch of fat old men standing still, singing about, I'm going to walk over there, and singing about that for 25 minutes. It was like, well, just walk over there. I was thinking, can't you just fucking walk over there? Stop singing about, I'm going to walk over there. It's like, for God's sake, can't anybody do anything quickly? And I get quite bored and frustrated, and I thought, I can't write that because I'm just going to sound like a total, just Neanderthal. And so I used to go to the bar in the interval, and I just used to eavesdrop on people about what they were saying about it, if they thought it was good or bad, or who they liked the best. And I would just sit and I would listen to them, and I would make notes, and then I would go to work the next day, and I would basically just write a review based on all the things I thought, and try and pass it off as my own opinions. And after doing that for about a year, and always talking much more enthusiastically about films, my editor much more wisely put me on to being their video reviewer. I started the video section, VHS and stuff. It was big. And so, they realized that for a classical music editor, I actually was, I should be writing about films. And it was like, for God's sake, they made me, they stuck me at it. I still was reviewing opera till I was in my early 20s, and I got better at it. But I loved writing about films. It was the night and day for me. When I got to write about films, it was like I felt like I was on safe territory, and I knew what I was talking about, and I had opinions, and I knew how I could express them. And I suppose it wasn't like poetry when I started, but I did enjoy it. I did feel like I was not a fraud when I started writing about films more. So I was happier doing that, and they let me do that, and that was great.
Okay, awesome. We are going to wrap it up here. I just got a couple of closing questions here. Do you have a favorite charity?
I suppose cancer research, because my father died of cancer when I was a kid. He had a brain tumor, and it took him a year to die, and it was a really miserable time. And for a kid, for him and for my family, and it had a huge impact on me losing my dad when I was young. So I suppose cancer research has always been my kind of go-to charity.
Okay, very good. Do you have any crazy secret hobbies like skydiving or stamp collecting?
No, my dad was into stamp collecting, and actually I didn't really know much about it, but my brother Russell, who's the next in age to me, I'm the youngest, but Russell, he inherited my dad's stamp collection. And unfortunately, my brother Russell died a few years ago, and 5 years ago, and then I inherited my dad's stamp collection from Russell, and it's got some wacky stuff in it. There's there's stamps from Nazi Germany and stuff in it. I mean, because that was when my dad was collecting, and he got stamps from all around the world. And so obviously he collected some during the war, and there's some funky stuff in there for sure. But I'm not a stamp collector. I think all of my interests are pretty well documented, and for the most part, all to do with, films. I love making videos and editing, and but all of that, it all ties into my interests. So, and I'm a complete coward. I hate hurtling, so I'm not going to jump out of a plane, and I hate roller coasters. I hate any feeling of being completely out of control. It fills me with absolute terror. I mean, I hate it. So no, I'm definitely not into that, I'm afraid.
Okay. All right. So the last thing I want to ask you is that there's something in common that I've found with every single artist and performing artist that I've interviewed. everyone, and it's called rejection. It's where something you're working on is not accepted. You know, it can be someone that has submitted a script for a book, or someone who has auditioned for a play or a movie role or a commercial for anything. Um, and it seems as if every single talented person who has achieved something notable has experienced that. Have you ever had to deal with rejection of something you were working on? And if
Oh
so,
gosh.
how'd you deal with that?
Well, I'm not really I'm not really one to give up on something.
Hmm.
And when I first had an idea to do a quiz book, it was back in the days when people still bought books. You know, before really before everybody kind of migrated over to computers, and before the Kindle, before, you know, there was a time when physical media, books and records and CDs, even VHS, you know, all of that stuff, it was deemed a little bit passe. And the idea was that we would all be, in the same way that there was the idea that once that there would be a paperless office, that there would be you know, that nobody would have physical media, everything would be streaming. You would just turn on your computer, you'd be in this beautiful blank room, and everything would be digital. But actually, the reality is that people, you know, reading a book is a sensory experience. It's not just about the words on the page, it's holding the book, it's smelling the book. I mean,
Hmm.
it sounds weird, but it is. You know, I've
Hmm.
got comics from 40 years ago that I collected, and my favorite part is going through and feeling the pages, and the sound, the rustling as you turn the pages, the slightly musty smell that I just breathe it in.
Hmm.
I swear, if I could turn that into an aftershave, that would just, you know, but that's what nerds smell like anyway. But you know, kind of so for me, you can't replace it. But you know, I for years I pitched a quiz book, and I originally called it Try Hard, which and I wanted to do a whole series. And I pitched that to everybody who would listen for years and years, and they would go, no, there's no money in books anymore, and blah 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 blah. And then I finally get this huge following on Twitter and social media, and suddenly I found a publisher who's like, oh, yeah, you know, Marshall, we should work together on something. And, you know, you've got a good following. It could be a good boost for the book. And so via that, then I say, okay, well, I'd like to write a quiz book. And that's why I did my quiz book.
Okay.
And still very few people bought it. So it was like, you know, it's like, honestly, you have a big social media following, and it's like everybody likes my stuff, but, you know, it's hard to get people to put their hands in their pockets for stuff. Not that I'm bitter. I was very happy with the book, but it could have sold a few more. It could definitely have sold a few more copies.
Okay. And you just answered another question, which I had actually skipped over for brevity. I was going to ask you if you were into comics, and it sounds like
Oh,
you are.
I know, I
You
love
collect
comics.
comics. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. Well, but most of the comics that I was into were when I was growing up, I was 100% just into horror comics. Like, I was not
Okay.
interested in superheroes really at all. I kind of got into superheroes when I was about 20. I mean, I
Mm,
liked Spider-Man when I was a kid. But most of the comics I read were kind of you know, ghosts and unexpected, and all the DC stuff, and also the Charlton horror comics, and also, you know, weird science, and you know, all the EC horror comics and stuff. I just loved all that. I just was a really gory little monster kid. And then I really got into Batman. I just became, for a good 10-15 years, I was just like, no, it was just Batman for me, and I just consumed a vast amount of Batman. And so I still read comics, but not nearly as voraciously as I used to. But I love
okay.
comics. How
Did
can
you
I
ever,
not love comics?
right? Did you ever get off into Japanese anime or manga?
No,
Really?
no, I never
Okay.
did. I just my kids, my youngest Phoebe, she's into that, and she's sort of opened the door for me into things, and I love that. I love that, you know, my kids. I kind of got them into nerdy things, and then they got me into their nerdy things. They found their
Nice.
own things to be nerdy about, and so, but it's not really my thing. I don't know. It just never quite connected with me. My favorite animation is like Looney Tunes and like Batman animated. So I suppose sort of Warner Brothers. And there's just something about the colors and the vibe and yeah, I just, you know, I just love it to pieces. And just more the Western sort of style, I suppose.
Okay. All right. Well, it looks like we ran over here a little bit, so let's wrap this up. And I want to thank you very much for your time. I consider it an honor to have been able
Oh,
to interview
please.
you. And, you know, thank you.
I love chatting with you. And I'm sorry,
Okay.
everybody, for just banging on and on and on.
Oh,
I
no,
mean,
no. There's a lot to be learned here. And on that note, if someone uh when someone references this video in the future, let's say somebody young or old has decided, I'm going to write a book. This man here was successful. He won an award. Let me try to learn something from him. Okay. If someone wants to become a successful award-winning author, such as yourself, what is a single best piece of advice that you could give them?
it's funny. When we were doing our signings in LA, a lot of people were going along the line asking all these amazing artists for advice. And they were talking about, and there's a lot of advice in our book, good life advice, not necessarily just for, people who work in the makeup industry. But when they came to me, I thought, okay, you're going to have to change your question because I'm not a makeup artist. But they're like, but they would. A lot of people said, do you have a bit of some advice for me? And so I thought, okay, I better come up with a good answer. And I said, stalk the crap out of everybody, just
There you go.
never give up. Just
Don't give
like
up.
I spent 12 years, I spent more than a decade hassling Howard to write this book for me, to write this book with me. And I think, and I chased other people, maybe not to that extent. And it hadn't worked out. And, you can tire, people can tire of you. People can say that they want to work with you, but they don't. In England, everybody's very like, they won't necessarily tell you to your face they don't want to work with you. They'll say, oh yeah, write to me and I'll be in touch. And they're never in touch. I've chased a lot of people over the years and nothing's come of it. And you can get really it chips away at you. It can wear you down. It can just, it's tiring and it's upsetting, and it doesn't always work out. There are lots of people who have their dreams smashed, and it annoys me when successful people say, oh yeah, just never give up and you'll achieve all your dreams, because that is bullshit. There are so many people who work so hard and don't achieve their dreams, and it's heartbreaking. But if, like me, you felt like you have no choice but to pursue this sort of life, if it's just your calling and you just have to do it, then I just always go with Commander Quincy Taggart from Galaxy Quest, and just never give up and never surrender. If you've got a contact with somebody, just never stop chasing them. And then maybe it'll sour and they will just say, look, just stop calling me. But maybe eventually you'll wear them down, and they'll say, okay, let's do it. If you want to work somewhere, never stop chasing that job, and don't give up on your dreams, unless you have to eat. and then maybe, do something on the side, as we've all had to do. But it's like, I know a lot of people who have been forced to give up on their dreams, and I don't know, there's seems sad about it.
Yeah.
I would just say, just be dogged in your determination. Just be like, that guy in Les Miserables, the guy is always chasing be like Javert, be the bad guy in him. Just never stop, just completely be monstrously determined. And if you get an in, exploit it. And if you have an opportunity, don't waste it. I've wasted opportunities in the past, and it's like, why didn't I just grab it? Why did I dither? It's like, just try hard and seize every opportunity. And if you're lucky and talented and lucky, then it'll happen for you. And it does happen. I mean, it does happen. So stalk and never give up.
There you go.
That is good advice. That's also the sort of advice that can get you imprisoned. But just, kind of, there's good stalking and there's bad stalking. People try and do the good stalking.
All right, Mr. Julius, thank you so much. For everybody watching this, thank Mr. Julius for his time. Just down below here on this YouTube video, there's going to be some links. Go take a look at his link tree in particular. It is massive. We ran out of time today, so I didn't cover it, but there is a lot of fun to be found on Mr. Julius's link tree. So
thank you very much. But please,
yes, sir.
Marshall, please just call me Marshall. I'm not nearly as formal as that. I might sound all English and stuffy, but I'm not, I promise.
Okay, well, thank you very much. It's been an absolute pleasure speaking with you. Yeah, as you know, I've been wanting to do this for a while now, and
I'm glad we were able to sort it out. I knew we'd get there. I knew we'd get there.
Yep. Okay. All right. Awesome. I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up. Cheers from San Francisco.